again, welcome everyone for joining today, and thanks for joining today. And I really appreciate that you were able to spend some time for the session or during your weekend and during late nights, right? And this is our ninth episode or ninth chapter of Power Platform, PowerApps for Kids APAC, right? And Elen and myself, along with a few other folks from PowerApps4Kids, we started it a few months back. And we have been successfully running it for a few months, and we have great audience, and we have a regular audience like Ashita and a few more people who never miss any single session, I think, right? And it's really great to have all of you here today. And today we have our speakers Hardit and Rami. So Hardit will walk us through on the Power Apps tips and tricks. It's a continuation session from the last month. So he ended up at alphabet G last time, and it's going to start from H until Z. And after that, we'll have Rami Monla going to show us how to build an Angry Birds game in Power Apps. It's going to be interesting. And after that, we'll have our announcement about the next meeting. So, but right now, I'll just stop and I'll pass it to Elen. Elen, you want to share something?
I don't have anything to share.
Okay, good. Then the stage is yours, Hardit.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Cool. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So yeah, I think I stopped at letter G last time. I'm going to start from H and hopefully get to Z today. If not, then you might have to tolerate me for one more session. Okay, so starting off with H, the tip that I'm going to cover here is about hyperlinks, or just think about them as, let's say you want to open a website, right? So you type a URL, you type a link. If you have any such link, how do you open that from within Power Apps? And the other thing that we will cover as part of this particular tip is you can not just launch links or websites or URLs, but you can also launch other apps from within an app, right? So there are two ways to do it. And there is one parameter that's important, which is it used to be called new and replace, if I remember correctly. Let's see. Okay. So the first example here is launching a link, and it's going to open this link in another tab. So if I click here, it opens this Microsoft Docs page for formula reference. Now, sometimes what happens is if you want to open another app from within an app, you might want to replace this app with the other one, right? You may not want to open it separately. If that is the case, the URL can actually be an app URL. And if you want to know how to get a URL, let me minimize this so I can open another tab. Then go back here. If you go to web.powerapps.com or make.powerapps.com, when you go to an app, you can click on the three dots. Let me go to the right environment, go to apps, click on the three dots and say details. And this gives you the app URL, right? So if you try to get this URL, and paste it, let's say in the onSelect property of a button, you can actually launch that app from within an app. I'm not going to do that here just because I don't want to replace this current app that I'm on, but just wanted to give an example or an illustration of the fact that you can launch web pages and or apps either in the same window or in a separate tab. So that was the tip with H. We'll move on to the next one. This one is pretty cool. This actually happened on a project that I was working. It reached a point where one of my screens had a lot of controls, And then eventually, right, you reach a point where your app becomes slow. Then what I tried to do was I was trying to figure out if there was a way to reduce the number of controls I had on my screen. And one of the ways to do that, of course, is if you can repurpose some of the controls for other purposes, that's going to help you reduce the number of controls on your screen. So the example that I use for explaining this concept is, let's say you have a gallery of certain records. Maybe it's gallery of games or gallery of people. And you want, and there are, let's say there are multiple columns in that gallery, and you have a button for each column as a header, and you want to use that button to sort the gallery by that column, right? And you also want to show whether the gallery is sorted in ascending or descending order. So you might want to add an arrow, up arrow for ascending order, down arrow for descending order. Now, let's say you have 5 columns. An up arrow and a down arrow for each column means you will have 10 controls. The first way to reduce that is don't use 10 arrows. Use 1 up arrow and 1 down arrow and change their X position based on the header that is being clicked. So just by doing that, you are reducing 10 controls to 2. Now you can actually reduce that 2 to 1 by simply using either an up arrow or a down arrow and controlling the rotation property of that icon, right? So if I click on this button, the up arrow changes into a down arrow, right? And it keeps toggling. Just to show you what I'm doing here, right? So I'm basically using a variable and I'm toggling that variable from true to false. And then if you go to the rotation property of this icon, it just says, if this is false, then keep the rotation as 0. If it is true, then set the rotation to 180 degrees. So just by using the rotation property of an icon, you can reduce the number of controls in this particular example from 10 to 1. So always try to repurpose controls and try to keep the number of controls on your screen as less as possible, because you never know, right? Later you might want to add more functionality to your app. So it's always good to keep your controls as less as possible so as to not affect the performance of your app. Jay, this is something that you depends, right? I mean, if you want to try, I would strongly encourage trying. Components sound scary. I was scared about them earlier, but then eventually I figured out, right, that components don't have to be complicated. A component could simply be just this, right? A label, if you will, and then 3 labels within it. Now, what you see here is literally the component that I've used in this particular app, so that every screen could just be this component, right? So if I go to this previous screen, you can see that there is a label 1, 2, and 3. And this screen literally has just one component. And all I have to do is set its properties, right? So header text is alphabet I. Header font size I've set 48. So I'm actually kind of think about this as creating your own control. That's why you get this custom list of properties here, and it's called custom properties because you can define what those properties are. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into components, but think about them as a set of standard controls grouped together to speed up your process of building apps. So if you know that there is a pattern that you are going to repeat on every screen, like in this case, I know I need these 3 labels on every alphabet screen, right? 1, 2, 3 again, 1, 2, 3. So if I need that every single time, I can just create a component and then use that. So again, idea is not to go deep into what components are, but I would strongly encourage you to test out components and try to use them in your apps. Keyboard mode. This is actually pretty cool. One thing I like to do is I look at apps on my phone like WhatsApp or any banking application, and I try to see what features actually make those apps more user friendly for me. One of the things that I noticed was if a field requires a number, like a phone number field, the keypad, the keyboard that shows up changes to a keyboard that only has numbers. It doesn't have alphabets. So how do you do that in Power Apps? Right. So there is a property for text input controls called virtual keyboard mode. I can't show that here on my desktop, but if you add a text box to a screen and then open that app on your mobile device, when you click inside that text input control, if the virtual keyboard mode is set to text, it will show your standard keyboard where you will have alphabets and numbers. But if you set this to virtual keyboard mode dot numeric, it will actually open a numeric keypad and it won't allow you to type in numbers. And then auto just allows you to type either or. So pretty cool. Again, obviously, right, if it's a numeric field, if you don't set this property to numeric, will it work? Yes. But it will show an entire keyboard with all the alphabets and special characters, which will be useless because they are just not applicable for that field. So just by setting this one property to numeric, it will make it very user friendly. And like, if you can see, I'm trying to type in alphabets here, but it doesn't let me, right? So it's also kind of a quick validation or test that the characters being typed in this particular text box are correct. Okay, next one, L. So if you have used a SharePoint list or any other data source, and if you want to create a record, you must have used the submit form function. You have a form, you use submit form, and it creates the record. So if you do that, how do you get the record that you just created? And an example for that could be, let's say you want to create a record, maybe it's a receipt or something in a SharePoint list, and you want that unique number of that record that you just created. So how do you fetch the identifier, the unique number for the record you created, right? The way you would do that is you use the standard submit form. Then you can set a variable using form name dot last submit. So like here, I'm going to type in my name and then click on this button. It's going to submit this form. This is just a one field form. And then I'm going to do form2 dot last submit, and I'm going to store that value in record ID. And then I'm going to display the value of this record, which is the ID is 28. And if I try again, submit form, the ID is 29. So it's just a unique ID that keeps on incrementing by one. So this way I can show like a confirmation message to the user that, hey, a new record that you were trying to create has been created. And the unique identifier of your new record is 29 in this case. Okay, next, this is pretty cool. Media controls. I use a lot of images and videos in my apps. So media controls, video controls specifically, has a few properties that can make user experience better or worse, right? So there is one property called auto start. Now see what happens when I go to the next screen. Right, the video on the left hand side has auto start set to true. The video on the right does not have auto start set to true. Its auto start property is set to false. As I came to the screen, this video started automatically, which is bad, right? I mean, if I get to a screen, I want to decide, I would like to decide when the video starts. So for a better user experience, I strongly suggest setting the auto start property to false. But then the other thing is, if you look at this video on the right, it just looks like a label to me with blue color filled in. If I know it's a video, yes, I can click on it and it will start the video. So the point that I want to highlight in this case is the video on the right has its show controls property set to false. The video on the left has show controls set to true. What that allows me to do is it clearly shows me an icon to play or pause the video, or to drag the video to a specific point, to control the volume, and to change it to full screen. So again, just to recap, set auto start to false, set show controls to true. New screens. Just like with app templates, one of the things that can speed up your app creation is by using screen templates. And depending on whether you are creating a phone app or a tablet app, there are at least, I don't know, a few number of screen templates that are available. For example, right? So I'm going to show you a couple of them here. If I click on new screen, if I know I need to add a gallery to my screen, instead of creating a blank screen and then adding a gallery, I can just say I want a list screen. It's going to create like a header and a list and a gallery for me, and I can just come in here and set the data source to whatever I want. So by using these screen templates, you can speed up your app creation process significantly. So always before adding a new screen, check it out and see if there's one that you can use. Okay. Onstart Property, again, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but few things that you can do in your Onstart Property are variables or values that you need throughout your app. For example, there might be certain colors that you want to use throughout your app. Maybe because your app has an orange theme or a red theme or a yellow theme. And instead of using this RGBA 920 921, instead of using that formula in every single place where you want to use that color, you can just set that color in a variable. I've called it GBL fill color. Put it in the app Onstart Property, which if you go here in the tree view, go to app. And if you go to Onstart, this is where you can set those variables. And then you simply can use these variables wherever you want to, instead of typing in the colors as an example in this case. So anything you want to use throughout your app, set it in the Onstart Property, and that will allow you to use it wherever you want in any place in the app. Phone camera. This is pretty cool as well. It would have been cooler if I would have been on a mobile device. So definitely try to do this on your phone. What happens is most mobile devices now have more than one camera, right? Like my phone has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cameras. How do you choose which camera to use for a photo that you want to take through your app? So this is a gallery which lists all the cameras that are available. Now I'm on a laptop which only has one camera, and that I'm using for on my call, so I can't see it here. But if I select the gallery, camera 1 is the name of this camera control, and what it does is camera 1 dot available devices. Add this to your to a gallery and open this app on your phone. You will at least see 2 cameras, because one will be the selfie camera or the front camera. The other one will be the back camera. If I open this app on my phone, I actually see 5 records in this gallery, and selecting those, I can actually choose which camera to use for my photo. So definitely put this in a gallery on your app and open the app using your mobile device to see really cool way to look at all the cameras that are available in your mobile device. Quotation marks. So one thing that confuses a lot of people who are starting with Power Apps is when to use single quotes and when to use double quotes. So a simple way to remember that is Double quotes is only when you want to use text, right? So for example, in a label, I want to set the text to double quotes are used for a label's text property or any other sentence that I will put in double quotes. However, identifiers, meaning table names or column names, those will be in single quotes if they have space in their names. For example, I'm doing a lookup to the users table where primary email is a column name. And because there is a space in that column name, I'm writing primary email in single quotes. And I want to do a lookup to users where the primary email is my email. Now my email is text, so it's in double quotes. So yeah, just to wrap it up, if you have any text that you want to display, that will be in double quotes. But if there are names of tables or columns that have space in them, those identifiers will be in single quotes. Next is reset function. So again, depending on what apps you create, if you add a gallery, it by default selects the first record, right? So here I have a gallery of a table. And by default, I haven't clicked in on this gallery yet, but the first record is selected by default. And what if you don't want that? What if you don't want any particular row in the gallery to be selected by default? You want the user to click on a record to select which one to display. So for that, you can use the reset function, right? But let me select the third record and click on the reset function. It takes it to the first record. It doesn't blank it out. I don't want any record to be automatically selected. For that, what you can do is for your gallery, set its default property to these curly brackets with nothing inside it, and then use the reset function. So now I'm going to select, say, the third record, and I'm going to call reset, and then in the bracket name of the gallery. When I do that, it blanks out and doesn't select any record. So again, I mean, there are many use cases where you might want to use this, but again, if you have any questions about when you can use this in any of your apps, obviously feel free to reach out to me. But it's always a good idea to not select a record by default and allow the user to select the record that they want to view the details for. S, very important. It sounds very basic, but I've had cases in which I have worked on an app for 2 hours and then something happens, my browser crashes or my laptop shuts down and I've lost all my changes. So always keep saving your app regularly and set this autosave property to on. It is set to on by default, but sometimes you might want to change it to off. Again, depends on how you do it. I've never turned it off, but I know a few people who do it. But make sure if you go to account, make sure this property is set to on and just keep saving your app regularly. Because yeah, you don't want to lose hours of work that you do in an app. And even more importantly, when you come here and say new app, Canvas, it asks you for a name, right? Which is good. You want the name right at the beginning. If you go here and say create app from blank, it also asks for a name. So make sure you enter the name right here. And then when you actually start building your app, you save it frequently just so that even if something happens, even if your app crashes or laptop crashes, maximum you would lose a few seconds or minutes of changes rather than few hours of change. So again, sounds very simple, basic, but more very important because all the other tips are useless if you don't keep saving your app. Only encourage you to do that. Tables. So you can actually create tables and use them in, let's say, drop downs or even galleries. An example of that is, let's say you have a set of games. Okay, let's say you want to create a filter gallery where let's say we have age groups, right? This could just be 1 to 3 years, or 3 to 7 years, and then 7 to 14, 14 plus. And you want to filter the list of gallery based on the age group that the user selects. So you can create a very simple table by putting the values you want as your filters or categories in a table like this, and then setting this as the items property of a gallery. That creates a menu like this, and then the user can actually come here and click on whichever age group they want to select and filter the list of games by. So think about this as creating an ad hoc table right in your app. You don't need to connect to Excel. You don't need to connect to a SharePoint list. You can create this table locally in your app. User function is actually pretty cool. It gives you some basic information about the current user. For example, you can get their full name, you can get their photo, and you can get their email. So in this case, when I do user.email, I get my email address, my full name, Hardit Bhatia. When I do user.image, I get this image, which is my image in my Office 365 profile. So if you have your photo there, you can fetch that photo in your app using this function. And the reason why this is cool is because sometimes you might want to show in your app in the top right corner photo of the user. It just makes your app more personalized. So it's always a good idea to personalize an app for users. So you can use this function to fetch their image. Elaine, do I have more time, or do you want me to stop here?
Hi, Adit. Yeah, sorry.
I can stop.
Yeah, I think we can stop because we are too on time. We started 5 minutes late, so you actually ended just on time. So for those of you on the call, last month Hardit did A to G. I'm going to leave the link to the video for last month if you have missed it. And I think we have Hardit on for next month as well.
Yes, yes.
It up. Okay. Thank you, guys. Rami, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Rami, I'm so sorry about the time. So
that's okay.
We got NZ time zone. Yeah. Mix it up. Anyway, we have Rami, and Rami's gonna do Angry Bird with us today. So I'm very excited about that. Rami, all yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It looks like we've got a good audience in there. My presentation is probably not going to be as technical as Hardit. However, I am going to be using a lot of math in my application. So first of all, I just want to introduce myself. So I'm Rami. I'm from New Zealand, a little country right next to Australia. And this is the first time that I'm doing a presentation for kids. So I'm really looking forward. And, you know, if you guys like what's happening, please react, you know, thumbs up, smile, you know, heart, whatever it is, just, you know, feel free to do it. Hopefully everybody can hear me well. The microphone is a little bit on the side, but if you can't, I can get it a little bit closer. Right. One thing I would like you guys to do is pin my picture. So in Zoom, just right click on the picture and then just put it on pin, because the rest of the presentation is just going to use the camera, and I'm going to superimpose the information behind me. So just try and pin that so that you can get the best option. Maybe if...
sorry, Rami, are you sharing a screen? I think still I can see Hardit's screen.
Yeah, so if Hardit can stop sharing, I'm not going to share a screen. Right, so I'm just going to use my video. So just pin my video and you'll be able to follow my presentation. But maybe if Hardit stops the sharing, then perfect. All right, perfect. So hopefully, as I'm talking, you guys will be able to hear me, and I'll be in the center. So just right-click on my picture and that little bit at the top, and then click on pin, or whatever device, you know, tap pin. I don't know how it works. But yeah, hopefully you can see me in the entire picture, and I'm the only person in there. All right, so just quickly introducing myself. As I said, I'm from New Zealand, and I actually have kids that are quite young, so 7-year-old, 5-year-old, and 2-year-old. So they're not at the age where they're really interested in computers right now, so they don't do a lot of computer programming with me, although I would love them to do it. But instead, today they were doing something else. They were doing slime. I don't know how they did that, but that was quite disgusting when I saw it. They did it in different colors. This one is actually a glow-in-the-dark one. And then this one, you won't be able to see it because it's the same color as my background. So it's just going to look like it's black. But this one is a bluish color that they've done. And I've just noticed that there's actually quite a little toy that they sort of stuck in that slime. So it's quite disgusting. But hey, that's what they like doing. And in order to be able to do that slime, they had to understand a little bit of chemistry. So that's one subject that they study in school is chemistry. And because of the chemistry and adding all the different chemicals together, they managed to do that slime. Whereas my presentation is mainly going to be focused on math, as I said. So next slide, let's have a look. I'm going to be doing something with Angry Birds. So one thing that I can do with the setup that I have is maybe poke the Angry Bird in the eye, or maybe I can bite that Angry Bird. That's really cool to have it in there and then be able to do all of that stuff. But anyway, so what do we need for today, for today's session? So hopefully, oops, wrong one. So hopefully you guys are familiar with the Power Platform. So some of the things that you're going to need today, the first one is an adult. So hopefully an adult can help you resolve some of the issues that you've got. Are you guys seeing the video the right way around, or is it mirrored? It's looking like it's mirrored on my side. It doesn't matter. Hopefully you guys can still read what you've got.
It isn't the right way.
It's the right way? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. The second thing that you'll need is the Power Platform. So we're going to build a Canvas app today that is going to be using some of the basic bits of the Power Platform, just like the previous presenter was showing us. If you don't have access to the Power Platform, you can go and get a developer plan for free, or you can start a trial for 30 days. So hopefully someone else can help you with those bits. Some pictures with Angry Birds in it, maybe a background, the pig, red, whatever Angry Birds you like, you can just go and select them. And then those will be used during the presentation just to make sure that we've got all the bits that we need. And as inspiration, what you can also have is toys. So I've got a few toys in here. The first one is red, and he looks like a sausage. He's quite a big inspiration for me. Speaking of sausages, it makes me hungry. Second one is Chuck. He looks like a banana. He makes me hungry as well. Banana as well. Maybe I'll eat that later. And the third one is Pig. But again, you won't be able to see Pig because he's the same color as my background. So he's going to look black. He's just disappearing in there. But anyway, those are the toys that I used for my inspiration when I was building my application. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a background. We're going to add a slingshot in it. We're going to add Pig, and we're going to add red. And then once we've got all of those, then what we're going to do, sorry about that, is add an equation so that red can actually reach Pig. So in order to do that, we're going to maybe start with three fields that we're going to have on the screen. Those fields are going to be part of an equation. That equation is available at the top, if you can see it right there. So it's ax squared plus bx plus c. The a, b, and c are going to be variables coming from those three fields. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do the calculations. And x squared give you the curvature that you need for your trajectory. The bx is going to give you the velocity and how far red is going to travel, and C is going to give you the starting point. Where is red going to start from? So we're going to work on all of that. I'm also going to add a slider, and basically the slider, as we move it right and left, will make red move from right to left as well. And the last bit is a timer. If we have time, I'm going to add the timer. Otherwise, I'm just going to show you the presentation on how to do the timer. So the main thing that we're going to tackle is how are we going to translate that formula, ax squared plus bx plus c, that will give us that trajectory, into something that can be used for the location of red on the screen. All right, so with that, I'm going to now switch into my desktop. So I'm going to stop the presentation. I'm going to get the screen in there, and then we're basically going to start from scratch. So I've got a couple of apps that I've already built, but instead I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to create a Canvas app. We're going to call it Angry Bird 2. So this is the sequel. This is not the first one. And we're going to create a tablet app for that. So this is a canvas. It's blank. There's nothing on it. And then we're going to start, as I said, by adding our pictures. So in order to do that, I click on Insert, select Media, and then select the image that I need. Hopefully, you guys can see that. If you're having issues, just let me know. So one thing that we need to do is make sure that the image position is set to fill. And I'm going to select an image that I've got in my gallery, which is the background in here. And once I've added that, then all I have to do is just making it a little bit bigger. And here you go. We've got our background. This is the first step. Second step is to add another image. This time we're going to add the slingshot. And we're going to put it somewhere around here. Or we can reposition it later. That's not a problem. Let's add the pig now. And then again, I'm going to reposition the pig, but let's say roughly we're going to put him around here. And then finally, I'm going to add red to the picture. And I've got a few expressions. I'm going to select this one because he looks like he's the angriest. All right, and let's put him somewhere in here. So one thing that I'm keen to do is make sure that his position is 104.55. This is just the equations that I've used when I was just playing around. So he's basically going to be somewhere around here. All right, so this is the basics. Those are the graphics that we're going to use for the application that we're building. So the next part is, as I said, is to add the slider. And that slider, as it moves from right to left, is going to make red move from right to left as well. Right, so let's have a look at a slider. This is the slider that we want. And let's give it a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 100. And let's give it a name. Let's call it slider rather than slider 1. I like to rename my bits. All right. So now we've got a slider. So remember, if you want to interact with the application, one thing that you can do is basically just hold the Alt button and then move it right and left. So as you're doing that, then you can move your slider and the values are going to change. All right, so let's go to red and let's have a look at his X position. I want the X position of red to change as the slider value changes. So I'll do slider dot value. All right. Okay, so let's try this. So if I hold the Alt button, there he is, he's moving. However, it's not exactly as far as I want him to move. So maybe this is not the right positioning for him. I want him, by the time he reaches 100, to be all the way over pig. So a couple of things I'm going to do. The first one is I'm going to multiply that by 100. So let's try that again. All right, this is looking good, but now he's like super fast. He's going outside of the screen. So I've probably overshot a little bit. So all I'm going to do is say the maximum is going to be 10. All right, let's try that again. Perfect. Perfect. So as I'm moving my slider, now I've got red moving from all the way from the left to the right. All right, so the next part is to actually add those 3 input fields. So let's start adding them one by one. All right, so we've got 3 input fields in here. And this is basically going to simulate when you're playing Angry Bird and then you push your finger down, you pull your finger on the character, it's going to simulate the velocity, which provides you the angle at which we're going to project red, and also it's going to include the speed at which he's going to go. And let's rename that one. So A value, B value, and the last one is C value. All right. And then let's give them some default values. So the first one that I'm going to use, I've got some values that I've already used, 10.6. The second one is going to be minus 93. And the last one is going to be 455, which is where red is starting from. Okay, so now I've got my input values. I've got my slider as well. So all I have to do is define how red is going up and down. So we're basically simulating him going all the way up and all the way down to hit pig. So to do that, I have to define his X position. So for the X position, I've got a formula that I have saved previously, and I'm just going to paste it in here. So A value dot text times slider.value times slider.value. So this one right here, slider.value times itself is X squared if you want. B value times X, and then plus C value at the very end. So those are the 3 bits of the equation. So let's reposition that to make it look better. All right, and let's have a look at how he's projecting now. And he starts there, he goes up, 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 and then he starts going all the way down until he reaches big. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted him to do. And if you want to change all those values, then you can put different values in here, and then he will have a different trajectory that he's following. There's a little bit of math behind it, so I'll talk about the math just in 1 second. So given that we've got a bit of time, this is the basics of the game, basically. So you've got the x-axis, where your character is moving from left to right. And then you've got your y-axis, how high he's going and how low he's going. And this is the formula behind it, ax squared plus bx plus c. Now let's make it a little bit more realistic and add a timer into it. So there's a few things that we have to change for the timer. First of all, I want the timer to run every 10 milliseconds. So this duration in here is in milliseconds. So every 10 milliseconds, it's going to run once, which means within a second, it's going to run 100 times. So that's the first bit that I need to do. The second bit is to add some values associated with that timer. So at the end of the timer, so on timer end, there is some equations that are going to happen in here. So I've copy pasted that, but let me walk you through it. So the first one says, set the x position to x position plus 0.1. So just increment it by 0.1 every 10 milliseconds. If it reaches 1000, then stop there and then set the position to 100. Actually, it should be 100 because we stopped at 100. But if it doesn't, then restart the timer. So it keeps looping and adding plus 0.1, plus 0.1, plus 0.1, and so on. So I just need the start timer and the reset timer as values in there. So this is basically going to tell that control that, reset timer is a variable that we set every time the timer restarts. And the second one is start. So this is start timer. And now if I click on it, then it's basically going to start and stop itself. A couple of things that I also have to do. The first one is define what x position is. So the default for that value is going to be x position. Sorry, copy that. So default value for the slider is x position, which means now we've got a variable that goes and sets x position once in a while. And then if I manually change it, I also want to set x position. So I go on change. Oops, not on select. On change x position, right? Here we go. Here we go. So every time I'm moving the slider, I'm actually setting the x position to a new value. So if I click on that, it will tell me it's 4, which is exactly where it is. But at the same time, if I change x value, then the value in there is going to change. So let's have a look. Let's give it a whirl. And here we go. It's doing it all by itself. So let's stop the timer, start it again, and then push the button. Woo. Here we go. We've got Angry Bird hitting pig. And again, you can automate it even more. You can add rules. So for example, when you hit pig that it needs to explode, you can make a few changes here and there. You can look at different values that you can add in there. So I'm going to say 4.8 for the value B, and then minus 35 for value B. And if I change that, then the trajectory is going to be slightly different. So he's not going to go all the way up, but he's just going to jump a little bit higher and then hit the pig. All right, so this is the basics of the story. This is the basic of the game that we're doing. Now that you've got that, with this, there's a lot of really awesome things that you can do. You can obviously improve it. You can look at making it a little bit more interactive. Maybe rather than having all those numbers, use a different mechanism to actually find those values, use different sliders in there, push a button, and then get him to fly and hit the pig. Add the score in there. So much improvement that you can do for that game. So just let me go back to my slides, and I'm just going to conclude with the last couple of things in here. So sorry, just give me a second. All right. Go back here. All right, so this is the equation that we've used. This is a normal equation that is used for trajectory. It's relatively simple to understand how it works. So hopefully that's a mathematical equation that you guys can research and understand how it works. But then how did I come up with the A value, the B value, the C value? The C value is straightforward because this is basically where we want red to start. So, looking at where the Y is, we'll give it a value, and then we'll put him in there. But then to find A and B, we've got two unknowns. So the way I did it is that I know what my destination is going to be, so where pig is, and I know at some stage in the middle where I want red to be at the top. So I took basically those coordinates and I plugged them into X, and then I also plugged them as the value of this equation. So basically, at position X, where X equals 5, I want, for example, red to be at 400, which is the elevation. And then at position 10, so when X equals 10, I want him to be exactly where pig is, which is at the lower place. So that gives you what we call a system that you can work with. So this is the values. So we know what C is, 455, because this is where it starts. And we know that halfway through, when X equals 5, I want it to be 400. And then at the end, when X equals 10, I want him to be at position, at Y position, 325. So basically, that gives you the equation that you've got. And with those equations, you can then deduce what A and B is. So you basically make sure that your top equation in here, you can multiply that so that, let's say A and B, or A, top equation plus the minus equation, the bottom equation would cancel each other out, and you can get rid of one of unknowns, such as A or B, and then you can find the other unknown. So yeah, getting a little bit sort of advanced maybe from a mathematical perspective, but basically if you know the engine behind it, the physics behind it, then you'll easily be able to create your own game. So just moving forward, all the games that you play are basically based on really complex physical engines that have math behind them, that have physics behind them. So this is a very popular engine called the Unreal Engine, used for first-person shooters. And it has been evolving for more than 20 years. And it's turning into something really, really realistic nowadays. So in this picture specifically, they've spent a lot of time working on color reflection. So how does color reflect on an armor that character is wearing, be it something bright like something yellow, or those fusion lights that are green. You also have, the laws of physics. Like if I've got a seesaw or like a little tool that I'm using in here, how does that balance? How does it oscillate? This is using physics. And as you can see at the bottom, right there in that graph in there, this is using something very similar to what we did with Angry Birds. And then if you want to go even more advanced, looking at how to model cars and how those cars are going to be drifting and driving based on the engine speed and the tires that are on that car, to put all of that into a physics engine so that you can have a realistic game. What we built today is something very simple, something that maybe 20 years ago would have been a great game. Just a car that goes right and left, or a character that goes up and down with some basic physics. But then if you want to take it to the next stage and be able to do something more advanced, then this is where, carrying on with your studies, learning math, learning physics, going to university, understanding computer graphics, doing some advanced computer programming, you are the generation of the future, will be able to build games even better than that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that, little short demo on how to build a game with Power Apps. But I'm sure this is just the beginning of your career, and you guys are going to be doing some fantastic stuff. So thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Anyone, if you have any questions, please unmute and ask Rami. By the way, Rami, it's such a wonderful session. Like I was like literally watching it like a kid.
Yeah.
And now I think I need to change my career into probably game designer, I think.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that have done that. So, if you've got the skills, by all means, do that. I'm going to eat my banana now. So any other questions?
Rami, I need a tutorial on how to present like this.
Yeah. Actually, I forgot to add the link. I've got a link on my YouTube channel that talks about, how I did the backgrounds and, how I changed all of that. But yeah, it makes it a little bit more interactive. I had more ideas to sort of play around with, but hopefully next time I'll be able to introduce them. And mainly what I wanted is for everybody on the call to be able to interact with us. So maybe by pushing a button or something, I'll have some lights switch on, or just to get a little bit more feedback. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do that next time.
So Rami, if someone wants to try and build this game, what's it called again? Angry Birds. If someone wants to try, if the kids here wants to try, is there a starting point? Do you have maybe a skeleton file that you can share with them,
sure.
or anything? Or
absolutely. So what I'm going to do, probably the easiest way, is to export this solution. It's just a Canvas app with a few formulas, and I can hand it over to you. You guys can host it somewhere and make it available for everyone to download, for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great, Rami, because I'm sure all these kids today come here to try this game. And math formula is not something that we have actually spoke about in this whole year. Yeah, so it might be a new concept to a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it pays to stay in school, because you're going to learn all of those as you get older. And then once you understand what you can do with them, the sky's the limit. You can do some amazing games.
Thanks, Rami. Any questions? Boys, girls, uncles?
Auntie, how did you made your video coming background? Rami.
Yeah, that's a nice, it is a video background. So I don't know if I can actually show you that. Let me see if I can. So
there is no options for me.
No, because
I'm using, that one is coming.
Yeah, I'm using an application called OBS. So OBS Studio is something that can take your video camera feed and then change it into something else. I'll show you what reality looks like. So just give me a second. If I go here and I switch this off, can you see it? Right, so in reality, I've got a green screen behind me, and I'm using an application called OBS. Maybe I can, let me see if that will work. All right, is it that? and then bring OBS. No, this one. Here we go. Okay. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second, and I'll bring it back. Okay. Yeah. Now you can see it. So you can see how it's doing all that reflective thing, because I'm actually showing you what that application is called. So it's called OBS Studio, and it allows you to take a camera feed, and then within that camera feed, you can go and add a filter. I don't know if this is showing in there, but yeah, this is the chroma filter. So basically it takes the color of your background and it removes it completely. And then what I'm doing after that is adding an ongoing, either a screen, which is my background, or I'm actually adding a video. So if I click on that, no, now it disappears. But basically I replace my background with a moving video, and that's happening in real time. Hopefully Zoom and Teams are going to introduce that features as something that happens all the time. But basically this is how I was able to sort of still be available in here. And then I've got that background behind me just to show you what's what I'm working on.
It was a cool trick.
Yeah. Let me see. I don't know if I can share. Maybe later I'll share my the URL. Give me a second. I'll share the URL right now. So I've got a URL that shows you how to do all of that. It's just on my other account. Give me 1 second, really quickly. Here we go. Any other questions while I'm actually bringing that up?
The game was very good. Thank you, Uncle.
That's okay. You're welcome. Let's see. Conversation. Okay. Here we go. Better presentation. That's the one. All right. I'll paste it into the chat, and hopefully you guys will be able to see it. So it's that link in there. Give it a try. It explains a little bit about how I actually did that background and the presentation. Cool.
Thanks a lot, Rami. If no other questions, I think we reached to the end as well. We're at 3:30 now. Me, Jiwa, gonna stay back. I'm not sure, Rami. It's very late for Rami, I think, and Hardit now. But Jiwa and I gonna stay back if you guys have any questions. And I'm gonna also share Hardit's blog. Hardit, I think you have an A to Z blog, right? I'll share that with you guys on the chat as well, so you guys could pick that up. Thank you. See you guys next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.